Welcome to Dollars and Cents with your host, Jeff Davis and Chris Coleman from Falcon Financial Management.
Good morning, Gainesville, Ocala. It is Saturday, February 2nd, and you're listening to Dollars and Cents with your hosts, Jeff Davis and Chris Coleman. Jeff Davis, certified financial planner, president of Falcon Financial Management, creator of the integrated wealth management process, and a man recognized by Barron Magazine as one of the top 500 independent advisors in the country. Recently nominated into the University of Florida Athletic Hall of Fame in the category of wrestling. We're looking forward to April 6th. My name's Chris Coleman. I'm the managing partner at Falcon Financial Management. And behind the glass, we have Lisa Meadows. Lisa, how are you today?
Very good, thank you. Beautiful ride in today.
Wow, you've got a spring in your step.
I love being here. That's the main thing.
Well, we're glad to have you here.
I'm glad you allowed me.
Well, we're glad to have you here as well.
And don't hit me in the head with the bait.
I've been working on that. Yeah, that first toss was a doozy,
Well,
right?
I had to become a better catcher.
Well, we've made a good team. Mr. Davis, how are you this morning?
I'm rocking, ready to go.
All right, Jeff Davis is fired up.
We got lots to talk about this week. We had the town hall meeting on Tuesday night, and for those that are listening that were able to get there, I hope that they had a good time and that it was that the information was up to what they expected. We had Dan Chalmers, who is one of the CPAs and partners at Stormont and Chalmers, talk about taxes. And we had our good friend Kevin Downey talk about some ideas about wills and trusts and some of the changes that we saw from the fiscal cliff negotiations. I don't know what this is all going to be called. I'm sure it's not called the fiscal cliff negotiations from December the 31st, January the 1st. And then I talked about the economy, which has gotten more confusing as the week has gone on. So it's and some of this is the economy and the stock market don't necessarily mean the same thing, and it doesn't they don't necessarily work hand in hand, walk in lockstep. Last year, the S&P 500 was probably up around 16%. The Dow Jones up around 10%. Less than, about a 2% average GDP for the year, including a negative fourth quarter, which was the first negative fourth quarter we've had, or negative quarter we've had since 2009. So, that raised the specter of the possibility of us walking into a recession, which has been a real concern of mine. But we use the ISM index as a real key component of our evaluating the economy. And the ISM index, which is a measure of whether purchasing managers buy more or less raw goods. Excuse me.
Well, bless you.
And if they're buying more raw goods, then we have an expanding economy, fewer raw goods. We have a contracting economy, and it goes from 0 to 100. Any number over 50 indicates an expanding economy. And we had one of our better ISM indexes come out yesterday.
A little over 53.
Mm-hmm. So this week we saw the reports of a negative GDP. We saw unemployment go up, and we saw the ISM index indicating an expanding economy. And if you look at since 1948, we have not had a recession when the ISM index is going up. So we've got conflicting signals right now. We've got two out of the last 3 months of 2012 had a contracting ISM index. Excuse me, I said that wrong. 5 out of the last 7 had contracting ISM, and we had 3 of these last 7 that are going to be positive or expanding. So we've got some confusing data coming out right now, and then the Dow is at 14,000. That's a really high number for the basics. And so many professionals are a little uncomfortable with whether or not this bull market has legs and whether it's going to keep going up, or whether we're seeing it approaching a peak, and the stock market tends to be 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. So, if we've had our 1.5, almost 2 steps forward.
Yeah, are we lifting the leg to step back? Are we starting to lift it? Yeah.
Not yet. I mean, so, but there's a lot of enthusiasm. And I think that for the year, we're going to have a pretty decent year. It's interesting, the last 2 years, though, what I've predicted as what the Dow would finish, it's finished about a month later.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been off by a month on both years. I thought the Dow would get to 14,000 for 2012. It wasn't, but it did get to 14,000 yesterday.
Well, in terms of the lifespan of like a redwood, that's like a millisecond being a month off.
Yeah. In this business, it's not a good thing. So, I think you're going to see some volatility, some significant volatility in 2013. But I think we're going to see a pretty decent year, unless there's some sort of what they call black swan events. 9/11 was a black swan event. In the back of your mind, that something like that could happen, but it was never. That wasn't going to happen. The 2008 deleveraging crisis, real estate boom, collapsing in the fashion that it could happen, but nobody really thought it was going to happen, and it just happened. So I don't know. There may be a black swan event that goes on in 2013 it could happen, but I don't see it happening right now. So there's optimism, but there should be guarded optimism. I think for the year we're going to do good. I think for the year that we will have a positive GDP. I think the stock market's going to get better for the year. But I think that the headwinds and challenges, especially in these first 6 months, are going to be pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people need to be prepared for that. Of course, if you're investing in a 401k or a 403b or something where you're making contributions every day or every week when you get paid, it's really important that you continue to do that. The stock market goes up, the stock market goes down. When you're accumulating money for retirement, you're really accumulating money you're accumulating shares, not money. That's what you really need to be focused on. And what I mean is, if you look at your statement, if you have a 401k and a 403b, on your statement every month, it's going to tell you what the total number of shares that you own are. And then you're going to see what your contribution is, how many shares that bought of the funds that you're using to fund the 401k or the 403b, your tax sheltered retirement account. The key to being successful in saving money is accumulating those shares. If they're less expensive, every dollar is going to buy more shares. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. If the stock market's down, but if you're not using your money, all of this is an opportunity to accumulate more shares. The stock market goes up, the prices of stocks and mutual funds go up. You're going to buy fewer shares with each dollar. But your average cost will be lower than if you're trying to measure, okay, the market's up, I'm going to put more in, the market's down, I'm not going to put. It's human nature. When the markets aren't doing well, people don't like them. When the markets are doing well, people like them. And I used the 2002 numbers that I just remembered that showed that the highest number of purchases going into mutual funds was April of 2000. The peak of the stock market was April of 2000.
Mm-hmm.
The most money that left mutual funds was August of 2002, and that was the bottom of the market. So people on their own tend to get excited when the market's doing better and want to get invested, get depressed when it's down and want to get out.
Yep.
And in reality, what you want to be doing is the opposite.
Gotcha. Well, it looks like we've got our first caller today. Dave, you're on the air. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Good morning, Dave.
Speaking of the 401k and the IRAs, we pretty much, at least the rumor is that the government has their eye. They want to nationalize both 401k and the IRA. My question is this. If you convert your IRA to a Roth, do you think it will still be gulped up by the government?
Well, there's two things that I hear on a regular basis, Dave. One is that the government's going to confiscate our guns, which I don't think will ever happen, and I think it would be a real bloody battle because an awful lot of people aren't going to give up those guns by just a request, and what you're talking about in terms of the possibility of nationalizing pension plans and IRAs was first proposed by Elizabeth Warren, now the senator from Massachusetts, about 5-6 years ago. And the theory was that they could take those, nationalize them, and they're going to put them at the government. You're not going to lose your money. You're not going to lose your account. They'd put it at the federal government, and then they would pay you an income for the rest of your life, like Social Security. They would pay you an interest rate. Now you'd lose the ability to be able to take lump sum distributions, time when you're going to get the money or not get the money. There may be issues in terms of passing it on to heirs. Those are all questions that nobody has an answer to, and I don't believe that they could get through Congress the ability to do what you're fearful of it happening. And you're not alone. You're not alone at all, Dave. There's a lot of people that think that they've heard this and they think that it's imminent. I don't believe that it's imminent, and I don't believe that it could get through Congress or the Senate. And I don't, in 1776, there was a big, somebody threw tea over the side of a boat over taxes. And if you want to see a tax revolution, try and take everybody's IRAs or pension plans. I think you would have.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, sir.
I guess the question is, though, if it does happen, and anything is possible under the current
they're going to they'll take Roths also.
They'll what?
They'll take the Roth also. If under the scenario that you're describing, it's not going to matter whether it was a traditional or whether it was a Roth IRA.
They would take it all.
I don't believe that's going to happen, Dave, but if in fact it can, that's what I would expect to happen.
I do appreciate your input.
Thank you, Dave.
Take
care.
Dave.
Have a great weekend.
You bet.
I would be surprised if they took the Roth because the money's you've already been taxed on the money once.
If you're going to take it, why not take it all?
Yeah. Well, I agree as well that no one will. That they did such a good job with Social Security in the management of those funds for all those years that I don't think the general public could stomach it.
Well, let me just say this: if you don't have a retirement plan,
mm-hmm.
you're not contributing to a retirement plan, and you don't feel like you are getting everything that's due you, then your retirement plan looks really nice to me. And I think that that's not an uncommon theme in our world today. There's some people said there's makers and takers, and so this common word, you're a taker, has become like something evil. But there are people, Bill Mayer said this, the one of the most liberal guys that there are on television, and one of them, somebody I can't even turn on and listen to, but I saw on Real Clear Politics a clip where he was talking about takers. And so he ended up not saying it was 47%. They cut it in half and said, well, probably there's 23.5% that are people that, I don't know what the number is, but there are people that have made a decision in their life that the government's going to support them and that the government's role in their life is to support them. For me, the government's role is, build the roads, keep the, schools, roads, armies, and get the heck out of my way. I mean, there are people talk about the industry of investing as being this unregulated industry, and that is so far from the truth. There's regulations. Now, the regulations don't always work, as evidenced by what happened in 2008. Even what it was evidenced by 2000, 2001, 2002. There was always people that are finding the kind of the shadows, and that's where they operate in. And it doesn't matter what the rules are, there are people that are rule breakers, and they're going to figure out how to bend the rules, if not break them, bend them to suit their needs. And there's a lot of really, really smart people that are only interested in greed at this point. Now, there was those people were robber barons 150 years ago. They were the evil people of, the European aristocracy of 300 years ago. And we probably can go back through all of history and identify people that were interested in, were trying to take advantage of the system and creating wealth for themselves without regard for the whole. And this is, this is more philosophy than it is anything else. I mean, the collective. Well, when you start talking about the collective, I get, in my mind, just the word collective harkens back to communism and what happened in Russia. They had collectives. So I don't like to hear our president refer to the collective in any fashion. But philosophically, Mr. Obama and people who agree with him, they think that they should raise revenues from those that are to provide a higher standard of living for everybody. That you should raise that standard of living for everybody, whether they're contributing or not. Now, that's not to say that there's not people who are. I have a lot of respect. I know you do a lot of work with the East Side. There's a lot of people all over our community that have got a lot of challenges in front of them, and they're working really hard. There's the mom that's got 2 or 3 kids. She's alone. She's working 1 job or 2 jobs, putting food on the table. My hat's off to that person. How can we help them? How can we help them? Whether it's Catholic Charities where I'm involved, Red Cross where you're involved, wherever it might be. Those are the people we want to be helping. The person that is healthy and has decided, I'll take the money from the government rather than take the job which pays the same. I don't have to work and I can get this much money, or I can work 40 hours a week and get that much money. I'll stay home and take this money. That's, you know what? You don't deserve the money. Mm-hmm. I don't care what you say. You go out and get the freaking job. That's my attitude. I think everybody can work. You may not get the job that you want, but there are jobs. Now they may not be what, as I said, they may not be what you want, and they may not make you happy, but there are jobs out there. Lisa, you have a question?
Jeff, I was just going to say, if you can hold a sign, if you can hold a sign to beg, why couldn't you hold a sign for a pizza parlor? Or something like that, out in the hot sun, actually, right?
No, I I think that we've got a tremendous pool of unemployed people, and we have a big pool of jobs, and we continue to have 8% unemployment or more. Everybody, I think, recognizes that if they say 8% unemployment, there's a lot of people that have stopped looking for work. There's a lot of people, but who just for whatever reason decided they didn't want to pursue it. So there's this other population that probably almost doubles our unemployment. But we've got this big pool of jobs. What is the problem getting the people who are unemployed into the jobs? One of them is education. Our education, we have got to re-educate people. I'd rather us spending money on educating people and getting these jobs over and over again. People who are the guy that came to fix the refrigerator, the guy that came to measure for flooring. Every one of these guys has got, they're using these computer/communication devices now. So they've got to be able to use that device to be able to order their equipment, charge you, print it out, boom, 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 all of these things that require a certain level of sophistication, which some people don't want to do, and they've made up their mind that they can't do or they don't want to do, and they've got to learn how to do it because that's where the jobs are. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have a guy coming in from Sears without that computer to work on your refrigerator, your washer, or anything else. He may have to learn how to turn a screw, but he's still got to run a computer to be able to communicate and be able to do all the processing and everything else. I mean, somehow we've got this mismatch, and we've got to bring them together to bring unemployment down. And unemployment's got to go below 6.5% before the Fed is going to let up on what they call quantitative easing. You might hear it referred to as QE. QE1, QE2. We're now in QE3. That's quantitative easing. That's what the Fed is doing. They're buying mortgage-backed securities. They're buying federal debt. They buy things of that nature. What they're doing is creating more money in the system. They're essentially it's more complicated than just printing dollars, but if you want to simplify it, what the Fed is doing with quantitative easing is printing money. They're putting more money in the system. That liquidity that's in the system, a lot of people think that the rise in the stock market is coming from that quantitative easing, that more money that's in the system is making things
artificially inflating.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, what happens when you put more money in the system? Every dollar that you have is worth a little bit less in terms of purchasing power. So if we're reducing the purchasing power, what you're in effect doing is tempting inflation, spitting in its eye with all this printing of money. And inflation is going to go up someday. Inflation is like the stock market. It's a cycle. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. When you have practically no inflation, you have practically no interest rates, then you know that they're not going to go down. They've got to go up at some point.
And that's when the Fed used as their disclaimer for raising rates was if the fear of inflation became too great, that would be when they would start to jack rates.
Well, 6.5% on 6.5% unemployment, and 2% inflation are the targets.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the inflation we'll get to before we're going to get to the unemployment number. But if they're going to be pulling back on their quantitative easing when they see unemployment come down, we could be having quantitative easing and the printing of money well into 2015.
Mm-hmm.
If you looked at today, if unemployment is 7.98% in round numbers, we want to get it to 6.5%, and it went down 0.1% every month. We're talking about 15 months from now before it got to 6.5%. 15 months from now is May, June of 2014,
Mm-hmm.
of 2014, before we would hit that 6.5% unemployment number if it went down 1% a month, every month for the next 15 months. So, the headwinds aren't going away. We've got the continuing resolution that has to be, or budgets that have to be dealt with this year. The Democrats have said they are going to make a budget, this was there was a calculated decision by the Democrats. They didn't want a budget. They didn't want to have to be responsible for putting on the record, this is what we're going to do, while Mr. Obama was running for election or in the run-up to his election. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore, so now they can do a budget. So 2014 becomes the new battleground. Senate, House, back to the same things that we were doing in 2010. And it's not here yet, but I would bet that by this time next year, the noise level is going to be just as loud as it was 6 months ago.
Joy.
Yeah. Well, if you own the radio station, it's a good thing because we're going to have lots of ads coming through here. It's time for Mr. Yoho to start buying ads.
There we go.
And it'll be interesting to see if anyone runs against him, or I think he's at this point a pretty popular congressman from Gainesville. So I hope that he sticks to his guns. Only stays 8 years if in fact he's able to be.
Assuming he gets to keep his guns, right?
I got a feeling he'll.
Ted's keeping his guns.
Not going over there to get his, that's for sure.
Oh, man. You hear talk of the change in the job market, the technology such as warehouses and manufacturing plants, and that when companies were stockpiling cash and as they reinvested in their businesses, that it went to technology, with robots doing the work that people used to do. I know some of the distribution centers in our area have machines that automatically clean the floor. The ability for entire shelves of product to be robotically moved across the floor and over to the associate who actually puts them together. Still need for hands and someone who knows how to use and operate that equipment.
Yeah, but who moved that robotically? You move that whole thing from one place to another. That was somebody typing something into a computer or manually driving it over there.
Oh, yeah, but that's one person driving and directing those as opposed to numerous forklift operators and that sort of thing. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It's a good thing for business, makes it more productive. But the shift of people and what they do, it is a more challenging job market. It seems like now we're experiencing a really dynamic shift in the marketplace and the skills that go with it.
Driven by the semiconductor.
Yeah, yeah. How are people going to adapt is probably
How?
the most. Yeah,
they got to. This isn't a question of how.
Mm-hmm.
You got to. You can sit back and say, "Oh, woe is me," but that's like sitting back in the Industrial Revolution and saying, "Golly, I'm just going to keep farming this little piece of land, and I don't want to go to work in a factory." Well, I don't blame you for not wanting to go to work in a factory, but when the farms fell on hard times, those factory jobs produced a lot of income that kept people. That was where we had to have unions to be able to make sure people got treated fairly. But we changed from an agrarian society to an industrial society. Mm-hmm. We're changing from an industrial society to a technological society. It's as unreasonable to expect that the industrial society of 50 years ago is going to be how we are today, because we've matured. You know where that industrial society is? It's in China. Mm-hmm. It's in someplace else where their population is where we were 50 or 100 years ago. In China, one of the problems that they've got is people want more income. People are working and they want to be paid more. They know that people get paid more to do the same work in the rest of the world. And then they want to be paid more to be able to do that. That's raising the cost of doing business in China alone. I know we're down to 1 minute, and you want to tell everybody our phone number and website.
Well, yes, probably pay the bills,
I think we should do that, yes.
Outstanding. Folks, if you'd like to give us a call at Falcon, the phone number is 352-375-7977. That's 352-375-7977. Give us a call. We would love to talk to you. If you'd like to check us out on the web, it's www.ffmonline.com. That's www.ffmonline.com. Folks, check out our website. We've had some changes that are there. There's where you can find out about the integrated wealth management process, an evolutionary holistic strategic planning program based on a conversation about your financial affairs for the rest of your life. It's the document that provides us all the ability to help you plan your future. Jeff, it is always a pleasure to be with you.
Good. Well, go Gators.
Go Gators.
Join us next week at this time for Dollars and Cents with Jeff Davis and Chris Coleman from Falcon Financial Management on News Talk 97.3 The Sky.